Welcome to the Foojay Podcast, all your news about OpenJDK.
This is the final part of the JCON interviews. Did I keep the best for last? Up to you to decide. In this episode you'll hear Simon Martinelli, Nicolas Fränkel, Marcus Hellberg, Rick Ossendrijver, Abdel Sghiouar, and they talk about a bunch of topics like evolving your APIs, GraphQL, Java versus Kotlin versus Rust, Vaadin, AI and ChatGPT, OpenRewrite, ErrorProne, infrastructure, and even a lot more. But let's start with CQRS and APIs. Both Simon Martinelli and Nicolas Fränkel had to talk about these and related technologies at the conference.
I'm Simon Martinelli from Switzerland, and I'm a speaker here. And I was talking about CQRS with modern Java this morning.
And what was the main goal the main message that you wanted to bring?
You know, very often APIs are created using REST or are RESTful, which is perfectly fine, especially if you're doing third-party APIs that are consumed by whoever could use it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing client-server communication with like an Angular or React client and the backend, then you probably would like to have something like an RPC-style communication. And so REST is sometimes not the best fit, and especially because often you have something called under or overfetching. So you send too much data or not enough data to do the job on the client side. And so CQRS is like the separation of the command side and the query side. And if you apply that to your API, then you have commands that have minimal data just to do the job. And on the other hand, if you want to fetch data from the server, you can have queries. You could do that with JOOQ, for example, and multiset to get nested structures, or you could use GraphQL, depending on what you want to do. But this separation allows you better understanding for the application and a semantically better API that is very easily to understand if you're looking at the client code.
So can I compare it to WebSockets, for instance, where you don't have a separate call each time? Or it goes further than that?
No, it goes further than that. I would say it's really like you have to do like a consumer-driven API. So very often the backend team is first and creates an API. And then we have the front-end team and says, oh no, I can't use this API, or I have to do tricks with the API or load too much data, transform it somehow. But this shouldn't be the case. You should really do an API that fits the client. And then you really have fine-grained access to the server and get exactly the code or the data that you need on the client side, yes.
So you're trying to solve a problem where you indeed have two separate teams working independently and then finding out that the thing that should combine them is not working correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's often the problem.
Yeah. You're a bit of a developer advocate, although not officially, for Vaadin and JOOQ. Why is that? Are these, in your opinion, the best frameworks you can use for their goal, like JOOQ for database stuff and Vaadin for user interfaces?
Yeah, I like a lot of technology. I like Spring Boot, but I also like Quarkus or Micronaut. But there are areas where people tend to use not the optimal solution. So for example, for business applications, people are using single-page application frameworks, and that could be a good fit. So especially if you already have a team that knows one of these frameworks. But for most applications, it's kind of an overkill or it's too complicated, because what you want to do is have a very simple UI with great components, by the way, and you want to do that fast. And I'm coming back from time where we used to have AWT or Swing to do applications. And I really miss this kind of great component frameworks that you can use to build your applications. And that's why I like Vaadin. And that's also why I'm doing a lot of talks about Vaadin, because I want to show this technology to other people, because I would say it doesn't have enough attention. That's the reason why.
And although it's not officially part of your presentation, it's not in the title, do you use Vaadin in your talk?
Not in that one.
Not
no.
in this one.
In that one, I use just JOOQ.
Okay, which is a unicum, I think.
Yeah.
You have two badges. You have a speaker and a volunteer badge. What does that mean? Did you help with the organization? Are you helping today?
I will help tomorrow morning and on Thursday morning. So I will be at the registration desk helping people that register, giving them the badges, the vouchers and stuff they get.
So this is really a community-driven event.
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
I talked to the organizers, which are also organizing a JOOQ. We talked also earlier in this podcast about the JOOQ in Switzerland. How important is this community for Java?
I think it makes it unique. I don't know any other community that is so strong. And it's also very helpful for new developers.
Mm-hmm.
So they can come here or go to a user group meeting and they will find like-minded people that are eager to help with whatever problems they have.
Because Java is, the trademark is owned by Oracle. Oracle is also the steering committee, let's call it like that, in the Java development. But I think the community contributions to Java are huge. Is that completely different than .NET, for instance? Can you compare that?
Yeah, I also do .NET programming sometimes. And there, it comes from another ecosystem, right? Because it's owned by Microsoft. It was always developed by Microsoft. And back in the days, if you look at C# WinForms application, you had this, for example, these components. So if you bought Visual Studio, whatever, then you get a catalog with all the available commercial components.
Mm-hmm.
So in this space, there were a lot of commercial components. So this was not community driven. That was driven by companies that want to earn money from selling the components. But in the Java space, open source was very early, very important. So I remember when I started, there was Log4j, for example, and JBoss, and these were already kind of community driven because you just could use that. In both cases, I think you had to pay for the manual. So the code was free, but the manual was not free. And so it's very easy to get access to that community, or you can write your own open source framework and just publish it on Maven Central, for example, and then everybody can use it. And that's something that makes it unique, and that's also why Java is so strong. Because for every topic, no matter if it's some very old topic or if it's AI or something else, you will immediately find someone who already solved your problems and you just can use it.
And we discussed this before with Sonar. It's amazing how companies are founded on top of open source, so they're still distributing their library or their application for free, but you can get commercial support or a more extended version if you pay for it.
Yeah.
So I think that's nice that you can build a library, and if it becomes popular, you can become a consultant for that library, or you can build a company around it.
Yeah.
You're a consultant yourself?
Yes.
What kind of applications do you work in?
I use a lot in the retail or wholesale industry, so ERP systems or other more back office like systems I'm building usually. Currently, I'm working for a company that is building software for the Swiss Gymnastics Association. So in Switzerland, we have a lot of sports club. They're doing track and field, artistic gymnastics, stuff like that. And the Gymnastics Association is organizing or is helping organizing competitions. And to manage all the competitions, starting from the subscription down to the ranking list, we build software to do that.
In Java?
In Java.
Of course.
I'm Nicolas Fränkel, and I'm here as a speaker.
And the topic is?
The topic is evolving your APIs, so HTTP APIs. The idea is most of the time you are in a regular project, which means that you are stressed, you need to do a lot of stuff, like designing your model, thinking about the boundaries, and then you need to think about all the REST stuff. Somebody said, hey, this is REST and this is what you should do, but actually some cases it's very blurry. Like some people say like the REST thesis is like the Bible. Somebody came, wrote a book, and then left. And it's up to the people who are left to decide what is the truth.
Yeah.
And so there is a high chance you didn't think about versioning your API. And I will show you a few tips and tricks. Well, if you attend my talk, how you can version your API as an afterthought without breaking too many things.
Okay, and we just had Simon Martinelli here who talked about gRPC
Yeah.
instead of or next to APIs.
Um,
What's your so his idea in the talk is sometimes you don't need all that data flowing back and forth over REST. Do you agree?
it's very hard to have a generic position over all use cases. There is GraphQL, there are REST API or RESTful APIs, gRPC. All of them have pros and cons, so it depends a lot on your context.
You're a consultant. It depends.
I was a consultant. In general, it depends at the beginning of the conversation. So if you tell me about your use case, yeah, I can tell you more. But I don't think it's the next generation. If you are interested in performance, it's much, much better. If you are interested in, let's say, speed of delivery, if you do gRPC, for example, it's possible, but it's much harder to call that from a browser or from a regular client. So if you have service-to-service interaction, yes. If you don't, and then if you have service-to-service interaction, if you change your contract, if you need to recompile your old stuff on the client side. So again, it depends. There are cons. I'm not saying they are bad. I'm saying in certain contexts, then there are good fits. In some others, there aren't.
How can people know gRPC protocol buffers? ProtoBuffers. That's related. Am I correct?
To be honest,
I think so. I think that's the way how you define it. But then
I remember that in gRPC you need to compile your model to some specific static stuff, and it might be protobuf, but I'm not sure.
And the advantage is you lose all the JSON or XML markup.
Exactly.
Defined.
I mean, it's binary stuff. That's why I'm saying that if you're interested in performance, it's much better. But again,
it can be more difficult to code it and use it.
Not to code it, but again, if it changes regularly, you will have a lot more trouble because you need also, in that case, to update the clients.
And that's why they have to come to your talk to know about versioning.
That would be a great idea.
Okay.
But if you are listening to us, perhaps you are a bit far away, so not that good.
All the sessions are recorded, I heard, so they will be online.
Yeah,
afterwards.
in a few months.
I don't know. We'll see.
I was looking there, but I should be looking there.
That's the camera, yes.
Hey.
That's the camera, yes. Are you also attending talks?
I am attending talks. I attended one talk, to be honest. I attended Frank Pachot's talk. Not only is French, but he also works in Switzerland. He also lives in Switzerland. No, that's true, but that's not the reason I attended. He was showing a few tips and tricks about Hibernate, but from the database point of view. And I think most developers don't care or don't know about this. And I was happy to already know a couple of things, but I also learned a couple of things. So that's really good.
Are we a bit spoiled with Hibernate that we don't know enough anymore what can be done with SQL?
To be honest, that was the case already 10 years ago. A lot of people at the time were already complaining that most people don't know how to use Hibernate. It's not because it works, that it works in the best way. And okay, it depends how much you want to optimize or whatever, but yeah, it's always like, the cost-benefit ratio. If you don't have any performance issue, that's fine. If you start to have performance issue, then you need to understand how it works. I mean, you know about Vlad Mialchia? Yeah, he's the expert on Hibernate and SQL and how it works. So yeah, I don't do Java and JVM anymore, or at least not as much as I did. But I still read his blog post when I can because they are also very interesting.
You don't do Java a lot anymore. What are you doing here?
Well, that's the thing. I did a lot of Java and JVM in the past, so all my network is here. But now I work for API 6. See? API 6. It's an API gateway. That's why my current concern are more about APIs.
And do you think that there is a better language than Java? Or what language are you using?
Though again, it depends. But already a couple of years ago, I started Kotlin. And I must say that every time I have to write Java again, it breaks my heart. If you do Java, that's fine, but really try Kotlin. And a couple of years ago, I also tried to learn Rust, which is very interesting. Like if you come from Java or Kotlin or whatever, and you learn Rust, it's really, really good. It's painful, like everything new, but it's really interesting. So I would advise anybody, but not only Rust, try to do some stuff that you've never done before, like Erlang or whatever.
By the way, I'm now doing my very first steps into Kotlin.
Perfect. Congrats.
And let's say it's just Java
No,
with a bit of improvements.
it's not just Java. So, for example, something very stupid, how many static methods do you code or do you use as libraries?
No idea.
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember my first Java lessons. Java is an object-oriented language, right? A static method is what? It's and what I dislike is once you understand that this is a static method, so it's a function, a pure function, hopefully, that you need to put in a class because the Java language tells you everything is an object, which is not true, right? We have been lied to for years. And in Kotlin, there is this extension methods pattern. So in the end, it compiles in the bytecode as a static method, but the way you write the codes, it looks object-oriented. Yes. And this is stupid, but it makes your codes so much better to read, so much easier to read. So that's what I like.
What I found out after doing some Kotlin for a few hours, and I stepped back to Java, I was already forgetting to put .comma or use the apply from Kotlin.
Yeah.
I was already missing it in Java. So I have to agree there is certainly some enrichment there on the language.
Yeah, the Lambda stuff is amazing. I mean, and don't take me wrong, I mean, Kotlin stole IDs from everywhere. Like if you have done some Groovy, you know about the IT parameter, the default one. It stole IDs from everywhere. But it assembled all those IDs in a very nice language, in my opinion. And the funny part is, already a long time ago, I tried Scala, and it didn't click. I didn't find it the same way. I mean, at the time, it was only Scala 2. There was no Scala 3. There was an implicit keyword. There was this implicit keyword as auto-conversion. It makes your codes much harder to maintain. And I feel that Kotlin gets you the same benefit as Scala, but everything can be like followed to the source code. Like you are in your IDE, you click, and you find the source, and you can read what it does. So that's really, I mean, from a language designer point of view, which I'm not, I think it's really interesting to see those differences.
But it's not a war. They're both running on the GVM, so...
Oh, definitely. But you know, Clojure is also running on the GVM. I tried it. I couldn't
click.
Yeah, I think Lisp is not for me.
Okay. But yeah, you're still here.
I'm still here.
And still talking.
I'm still
sharing
talking.
knowledge. So thanks for being here.
Simon already talked about Vaadin, but Marcus Hellberg was also at JCON, so he came over to talk about it and how you can build web interfaces with 100% Java.
My name is Marcus Hellberg, and I am here with Vaadin. We have a booth here. I have 2 talks, and just looking forward. It's been a great event in the past, so I'm happy to be here.
2 talks? 2 different topics?
Yeah, that's right. So tomorrow morning, I'm speaking about full stack web app development, 100% in Java. So it's going to be a talk just introducing new people to Vaadin Flow, to just the idea of why you might want to build an app with a full stack framework in general, like what's the philosophy behind it. And then we're going to spend most of the time just live coding, because having done this a lot, like I feel like the best language to explain a framework to a developer is code.
Show it.
Show it. Don't tell me about
Yeah.
it. Don't do an interpretive dance or mime or anything else. It's show the code. That's what's going to explain it to people the best.
And the other talk is?
So the other talk is a talk that I've actually given at, I think, like 10 user groups in the past month and a half. And it's a really fun talk where we learn about building AI-powered applications. And again, it's got a little bit of theory just to kind of get everyone on the same page. AI is very new, and it's like I've noticed that especially like Java developers, people who have actual day jobs and don't have time to be on the internet and just spend all their time learning about new things. They're not like everyone's not on the same level, so we spend a little bit of time just going through the basics of like how does everything fit together, and then again we spend most of the time just building an app from more or less from scratch, just step by step adding more functionality. So we build like a airplane or like a airline reservation system chatbot where we can actually like interact with our database. We can change bookings and cancel bookings and get information, and it's all grounded in some actual facts based on documents that we ingest and things like that. So it's like a realistic business app type of use case for AI.
But you have a bit of a history in this topic. The very first blog I saw about searching in documentation with the chat-based system was a blog you wrote.
Okay.
You were doing this with the Vaadin documentation.
Yeah.
And I repeated your process with the Azul documentation.
Yeah.
So it was 2 steps at that time.
Mhm.
You first had to create a vector database and then use it. Now with LangChain4j, for instance, it becomes a lot easier. I've done the same thing now with the JavaFX application.
Yeah.
You've done this with Vaadin.
Yes.
Are you also using LangChain4j or?
Yeah, for a lot of my projects, I'm using LangChain4j. I actually have a project where I've essentially the app that we're building in my talk on Thursday, where I have that same app implemented with LangChain4j, with Spring AI and Semantic Kernel, just so you can kind of compare the 3. And out of these right now, I prefer using LangChain4j. It's just kind of perhaps the most evolved of them, but it started earlier than the other 2, and makes it super convenient to build AI-powered apps in Java. They've done a really good job, I think. So I actually, last week, I created this little app starter where all you need to do is just change in application properties, one property to point to a folder where you have documentation. It's using Apache Tika for parsing docs. So it can literally be anything that you have in that database. It just goes through it, creates vector embeddings by default into an in-memory database. And then you just start a Vaadin UI and you can start chatting with that documentation. So the intent there is to make it like this whole AI thing feel a little bit less intimidating and difficult to get started with. So you can, maybe somebody who's interested in trying this out can take this app, they can point it to some internal documentation, whatever it might be, some PDF about their product, and then go and show it to their boss like, hey, look what I just built. And they're going to be like, wow, this is just what we needed. You can now spend a week exploring this topic further.
But was it you who shared, if I remember correctly, 16 lines of code for a Vaadin chat application?
Yeah.
That was the minimal code you needed?
Yeah, and that included the Spring Boot application as well. So,
which is amazing. That's what I find amazing about the Java community. If you find the right library, and it's probably available somewhere, you can write very powerful stuff with only a few lines of code, because the library is taking care of all the rest.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And I remember when I built the application that I wrote that blog post about that you mentioned, like this was over a year ago, when none of these libraries existed, and it was really difficult to build it because I was stuck as a developer working on a very low level of abstraction where I'm counting tokens and trying to make sure that I don't exceed the very small context windows that we had back then, and like trying to figure out how do I expel old messages and what do I do and this and that. And it was like several hundred lines of just boilerplate code that was basically just recipe for index out of bounds exceptions and stuff that I don't really want to deal with because it's not helping me build the actual application that I want to do. So these days it's like
It's just in the libraries.
Yeah, it's all hidden away. So now I'm actually working on the level of abstraction where I want to be, where I'm focused on the actual task I have at hand, and like I don't have to deal with all the boilerplate underneath, and it's really nice.
If you go back to Vaadin,
Yeah,
I've used it in one of my previous jobs as the UI tool for a business internal interface. Is that the kind of use cases that Vaadin wants to cover?
Yeah, so I think we even say it on our front page that we're kind of we don't think that business apps should suck. We think they should be great, and that's unfortunately not the case in many cases where business apps tend to be very kind of complex by their design. There's a lot of data and a lot of rules and forms and stuff, and at the same time they're not a product that brings in revenue, so they tend to be built with a fairly
minimal
budget, and they need to be maintained for a long period of time and all of this. So there's a lot going against them, but at the same time there are people in businesses who are sitting in a cubicle or at home working on these apps like 8 hours a day and not having a great time, and we really want to make sure that we make that experience as good as it can be. So that's what we're focusing on. Of course you can build non-business applications with Vaadin, but specifically you can maybe tell from some of the components we have in the library where they're quite more advanced than you see in some like Bootstrap type library where we have data grids and charts and these kind of higher level components that you can use to build apps quite quickly out of them.
And mainly they can be fully in Java.
They can be fully in Java, exactly. Yeah.
Which is, again, the library solving a problem. Vaadin takes care of binding what the user sees with the backends and saving things to the database, for instance, and updating.
And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. Like you just instantiate a Java object, but what you get out of the box is quite a lot. So for instance, you know that the EU and the US and others are rolling out quite strict accessibility requirements, for instance, and we spend a lot of time making sure that all these components that you just get when you type new grid actually are really usable for people with a screen reader, for instance. And that is something, again, like this is similar to me writing all that boilerplate code counting tokens. Like if you start with just a bunch of divs and try to build a data grid that's both performant and accessible and everything, you can spend a lot of that, like a lot of the budget that you had intended to spend on building your actual application, you're now spending on building components, and we don't want people to have to spend time on that part because it's not anything that's specific to their business. It's something that we can provide that they can build on top of.
And it's very powerful because I was at Devoxx in Antwerp some time ago doing a talk with a Raspberry Pi, and I had all the people in the room connected to a Vaadin application, and I could just touch something on the Raspberry Pi and it got all got an update at the same time. And my Raspberry Pi was using no memory at all. So it's really powerful. I can use it on a very small Raspberry Pi. That means if you run it in a business on a big server, you can serve a lot of people with that single thing.
Oh yeah. So my coworker Matti did like a little myth busting blog post on this, and like there's always this persistent myth that if you have some kind of server state, no matter how small it is, it immediately means that you can't handle any kind of scale, and essentially just by doing some tests and some math, like a quite modestly sized Amazon node can handle just like tens and tens of thousands of concurrent users with no sweat at all. So it's for the types of applications we're focusing on, where maybe you have a few tens of thousands of users, that's not a problem.
Is that the demo where you have the electricity system that's visualized?
No, that's actually another coworker of mine, Vesa, who did that for his own use initially. A lot of course, hobby projects start from your own needs. So this was
you're fixing a problem.
Like a year and a half ago with the whole energy crisis. Starting up, prices went high, and he wanted to have a way of monitoring that, and that kind of then evolved to a thing where you can download in Finland your energy usage data in a format, and then you can upload it there, and it actually tells you like if you had this type of contract, you would have saved or paid this much more, and anyway, so he built that, and of course because this was such a hot topic at the moment and still is, that has ended up having a lot of users. I think like 10,000 per day roughly, and he was running that on a Hetzner server that was like €5 a month, and like no issues at all.
So Java is powerful. We already knew that, but
Yeah.
you proved that even with the user interface and web system.
And of course then we have things like GraalVM that Oracle's been building, and I have the documentation app that I built. I just because I wanted to see like how low can we go, I compiled that to just a GraalVM native and put it on fly.io, and it's been running for a year using 100 megs of RAM. It's like it's mind-boggling what we can do.
Indeed, and that's what's thanks to all the evolutions in Java and all the technology around it. What we're seeing here at the conference and the several talks.
No, I think it's like I've been in the Java space for a long time, and I don't remember, like it's been many years since things have been this exciting in the Java space, where you have all this new stuff happening all the time, and it's super fun.
And some amazing libraries like Vaadin.
And some amazing podcasts like Foojay.
Thank you. Very nice message to conclude.
Yes.
Upgrading to newer versions of dependencies can be a bit hard. OpenRewrite is a solution to help you with it. And when you combine it with ErrorProne, you get more reliable tests. That's exactly what Rick Ossendrijver explained in his workshop.
My name is Rick Ossendrijver, and I'm giving yesterday I gave a workshop, and tomorrow I'm giving a talk here at JCON.
And your topics?
My topic yesterday was on transforming code with OpenRewrite and Refaster. I did it together with Tim de Beek from Modern. And tomorrow it's about saying goodbye to bugs and anti-patterns with ErrorProne.
Okay, saying goodbye to bugs. Everyone wants to do that. How do I do that?
Well, we at Picnic, I work at Picnic as a software engineer, an online grocery store based in the Netherlands, where we heavily rely on ErrorProne. It's a static analysis tool for Java, which not only detects bugs in your code, but also can automatically fix them for you.
Okay. And is it ErrorProne? Is it a tool you run next to your application? Is it a library? How do you use it?
It's a compiler plugin, so it runs as part of our build. So we use Maven, and if you do like a Maven clean install, it will run a lot of extra checks to analyze your code and see if you have any like code style issues or bugs. You can also write your own rules, and that is what we do a lot at Picnic. We write many rules to increase consistency across all our applications, because ErrorProne runs on all our 70 plus different repositories, to have a very consistent code base and have the lowest amount of bugs possible in our code base, of course.
So it's not during your tests, it's really analyzing the code.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like when you compile the code, just when the compiler is done, ErrorProne can kick in and uses the extra context that is made available by the compiler to do a much more thorough analysis, and then it tries to find all the bugs and anti-patterns in your code base.
I have to try it out. So you also gave a session about OpenRewrite. We already mentioned it before when we were talking about the move from JavaX to Jakarta. That's one use case. What did you show yesterday in the session?
Well, so Tim and I both have a passion for improving code quality, and preferably like in an automated fashion. And we both have our own way of getting there. So we use ErrorProne a lot, and he is from the OpenRewrite perspective. What we wanted to do with the workshop is basically show both ways in which you can reach like this level of automation and automatically improve your code base quality, and give a lot of hands-on experience to all the participants. And then we ended with like a nice comparison and show how you can use both of the tools and which one is best at which parts of automatically improving your code base.
So it's a combination, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what is a strong point of each of those?
So ErrorProne is meant to run as part of your build. So every time you build your code, it will do the analysis, and OpenRewrite is more for running once every 2-3 weeks. See what it finds, because it takes a lot more time to run it, unless you use their platform. So yeah, I would say that's the first big difference, and the other one is that ErrorProne is mostly on a per compilation unit basis, so it analyzes per source file, whereas OpenRewrite makes like a big model of your whole code base, analyzes all the files, and then for that reason can do a lot bigger migrations and refactorings compared to ErrorProne.
So I was thinking, as OpenRewrite is something you use if you want to go from Spring 2 point something to...
Exactly. And that's also something we used at Picnic.
Yeah, but you're saying that you can use OpenRewrite continuously also. So what will it give you at that time?
So ErrorProne is more for the continuous usage.
Okay, yeah. So you use OpenRewrite if you want to bump to a newer version of your framework, libraries.
Exactly, or if we want to find some common static analysis issues, for example, then every once in a while we run it to see, hey, did it find any new issues? And then we commit that, for example.
Okay.
Abdel Sghiouar is my next and final JCON guest. We talked about the JCON community and the Devoxx conference in Morocco, but of course also about his talk about infrastructure, gateways and proxies.
My name is Abdel Sghiouar. I am a cloud developer advocate at Google. I actually, it's funny, I am the least Java developer probably in this conference because I don't do Java at all, but I do hang out a lot in Java conferences. My background is in infrastructure. I do Kubernetes and containers as like a main thing. And I am here today because last year we were in JCREAT and I was talking with Andres Almere, and we started joking about the fact that everything that we use in our world as computer scientists is either a proxy or a VPN. And so I started digging and I went down a rabbit hole trying to understand what a proxy is and how a proxy works. And so my title of my talk, which is the first time I'm going to do it, is Proxies, Gateways, API Gateways, Why Words Are So Confusing.
Okay, I had a guest who is looking forward to your talk.
Okay, good. So it's basically just me nerding for 45 minutes about a research that took me like a couple of months to try to decipher what a proxy is and how is it different from an API gateway and why people use that sometimes the term gateway. And in my world, in the Kubernetes world, there was an implementation called the API gateway, which is not an API gateway, but they use the word for it. And so I went down that rabbit hole for like 6 months, I think, and I submitted the talk, and I was like, if they accept it, I will just basically go over my findings. So I don't expect a lot of people to learn a lot from my talk. I don't expect people to even go down this level of detail at all. But the whole idea would be to just nerd for 45 minutes, I guess. So
can you condense it in 2 sentences? What is the difference between all of them?
Okay, I can actually give you the last slide. Everything is a proxy, right? So the thing is like we use words interchangeably sometimes. But if you really look into the detailed implementation of everything that handles traffic, it's always a proxy. It might have features that makes it lean more toward an API gateway. It might have features that make it lean more toward a forward proxy or a backward, a reverse proxy. There's the 2 different types of proxies that people know. But at the end of the day, everything is just a process that receives a request and just play that request back to a different entity, right? That's a proxy.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
You said it's 6 months of research.
Yes.
Is that a good way to learn something? Is trying to present it in 1 hour, or write a blog post, or?
That's a very good question. Yes, I think so. Yes, I think if you are able to articulate the findings, I mean, it's not 6 months dedicated; it's 6 months on and off, right? But if you're able to articulate the way you understood what came out of your research in 45-minute talk, I think it's probably good in the sense that it allows you to understand if you have understood correctly, but also maybe you give some value to the attendees. That like, okay, so here is what people mean when they say proxy or gateway or API gateway or whatever. So,
or use the term sometimes wrong, I think.
Or people do that all the time. Right? So I can give you, for example, what is a gateway, right? Like if I ask you the question, what is a gateway for you?
Something giving data from one point to another point.
Okay, and also, you could argue that a proxy is a type of gateway because it essentially connects one entity to another.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, a gateway is just a generic term that talks about anything that sits between a client and the server, right? And people use this term even in non-tech world. Like we talk sometimes about payment gateway, right? Which essentially means the remote endpoint you connect to say charge this card this amount of money. So So yeah, it's. I hope it's interesting.
Okay. Geert-Jan, who is picking out my guests for this live podcast,
Yeah.
he said we should talk about Morocco.
Yes.
The JOOQ Morocco.
Yes.
Are you involved in the JOOQ, in the organization, in the
So
community?
no, but I'm involved in a conference called Devoxx Morocco. Right, it's the only Devoxx outside of Europe. It's 2nd to the 4th of October this year in Marrakesh, the city of Marrakesh. The CFP is still open, so it's dvma24.cfp.dev, and I'm in the committee for the conference. I've been involved for a very long time. It's super cool conference. There's a lot of interesting things. This year is going to be around 1,000, slightly more than 1,000 people. And yeah, you should come. You should submit and come, or just attend.
I just talked to the photographer.
Yes.
So
Dimitris?
yeah, if I understand correctly, he has to fly from Belgium, Devoxx, to Morocco, Devoxx.
I think it's the other way around.
Or
If I'm
the
not,
other way
yeah.
around?
I think it's not a problem because from Marrakesh there are probably direct flights to Belgium,
But
not
it's
to
really-
Antwerp. But
It's really one after the other.
yes, they are in the same week. But I was with Dimitri a few weeks ago. They had to do Devoxx France and Devoxx Greece.
Yeah, and now they come from Devoxx UK.
Yeah, and then they came here. Yeah, and I met them in Devoxx UK, and then they came here. I went to Jordan meanwhile.
So you're also one of those people traveling from conference to conference?
Mostly, yes, a lot of times, yes.
It's part of your job? It's out of personal interest?
It's part of my job as a
Yeah.
developer advocate. It's part of my job.
So-
A lot of times when you have conferences that overlap, I try to combine them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So also collecting frequent flyer miles?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Also like Garrett, my colleague?
Yes, exactly. Actually, I'm going with Gerrit tonight to Krakow for a GCON.
So
Yes.
you're also going to the next one?
Yes, exactly.
So you're a speaker? Are you also visiting a few talks?
I'm gonna attend a couple of talks. My talk is at 2:30, so I still have some time. We'll probably go grab some lunch and then attend a few talks until my session.
Stress for the talk?
No, not really. I've been doing this for a while, so
yeah,
not really.
you say it's a new talk. This one.
Yeah, yes. I think like the stress is a little bit of stress because it's new talk in the sense that I'm just scared that people will not be able to keep up because there's a lot of kind of details. But hope it's at 2:30, so I hope people will be caffeinated. So I hope so. I hope they will be able to keep up.
I think a very technical talk can be very challenging and give you ideas to research further. If you
Correct.
leave the talk and you have taken some notes that you come home and think, let me dive into this topic a bit further.
Or how can I make this easy to understand?
Yeah,
Yes,
and can
correct.
understand. Okay, thank you for being here. Thank you for the talk and have fun.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This was the final part of the JCON interviews, 5 podcasts with many speakers and even more topics. Thanks to all my guests for taking the time to visit the Foojay booth and sharing their knowledge. Check the Foojay website for all the previous episodes, and there's more to come before we take a summer break. In the next weeks you will get new episodes about music and MIDI, Java on embedded and vector databases. See you!
Give me a foo, give me a J, give me the friends of OpenJDK.